Alright, all you min-maxers out there, welcome to Rip Daddy's house. I'm your definitely probably viable IRL bard NPC Dave Makes Noises, and today we're asking D&D players what was the most unexpectedly broken character your DM had agreed to let you play. Part 1. So our last campaign ended 3 weeks ago to a TPK on a Dracolich, and we are now in a mini pirate campaign ran by one of our fellow players. I decided to design something that would mix like fire and water. Literally. I was the homebrew half-human, half-fire elemental sorcerer, Takris. Fire spells did double dice damage, and the one nat 20 he had 16 flame chromatic orb hit dice. Made a brick of rock charcoal. One rule we had, if I used more than 5 dice in one attack, I would pass out and had to flip a coin to see if I fell forwards or back. If I had used a flame spell, my body would be extremely hot, and if I fell off of the boat while hot and hit the water, I would die instantly to balance it out. Rock charcoal happened, died on impact with water. However, that rock had 65 hit points, and we were just meant to scare it off. I did 68 in one roll of the dice, and this was our first meeting. I went home to start a new character. Came back next week with my new character, the 43-year-old grumpy old man fighter who I had worked with a DM to add a thing we called Scold, which made them intimidated of me and would have disadvantage against me. While I jokingly said, "Hey, if I roll a nat 20 Scold, could I tame any beast?" We both laughed a bit and DM agreed. The thing was, he fought with a belt. That was his weapon. About 45 minutes into the campaign, we had a mini-boss. An undead Leviathan. Roll initiative? I was dead last for combat. Our little group did about 35 damage and our monk knocked it prone onto the deck. I sprinted towards it on my turn and asked the DM, can I put the belt through its eye sockets and strap it around it? Yeah, sure, but you'll need higher than a 15. 16. Barely scraped by. So now I'm on this thing's skull. Scold. You damn monster have the gall to attack me, crew! I'll tear your ribs out and use them to kill you! Nat 20. DM begins to describe it whimpering and sliding back into the water, and then I remind him. You mean whines in submission? Nat 20. I tamed it. Its name is Kola. My DM shot me a death glare followed by deadpanning, looking down, scribbling something on a paper, and said, I'll write up a character sheet for Kola. So yeah, we have an undead Leviathan mini-boss as a pet because of an old man who had scolded it into submission, all because my first character had died after making a giant bird into charcoal and falling into the water. The most broken character I played was an Oathbreaker paladin. I rolled god tier stats and ended up with 20 strength and 20 charisma. At level 7, I also had 2 core feats I wants to combo, Sentinel and Flail Mastery. When someone would run from me, I would get an opportunity attack with a +9 to hit. Then they would have to succeed a DC 16 strength save or be knocked prone. But they also had a speed of 0 from Sentinel, so they couldn't stand up until their next turn, which meant I would get advantage on my attacks. As a paladin. Nice. Also, because of Aura of Hate, Dueling Fighting Style, and Flail Mastery, my minimum damage per hit was a 14. My most broken character has to have been Zook, my bugbear battlemaster fighter. The reasons he was so busted were the tunnel fighting style, the sentinel feat, and the polearm master feat. Zook used a glaive as his weapon of choice, which gave him an extra 5 feet of reach on top of his long arm trait, meaning Zook had a melee range of 15 feet. On top of that, this man had the lunging maneuver, so if Zook felt like it, he could slap a hoe from 20 feet away. Zook infuriated the DM, because the tunnel fighting style, polearm master, and sentinel basically made it so nothing could come within 15 feet of Zook to try to pass him and attack his squishier party members. He was just an absolute monster who controlled the flow of melee combat. Mind you, his glaring weakness was long-range combat. He couldn't come within 20 feet of, but he still wreaked havoc on just about everything else. The relief my DM must have felt when Zook retired to learn how to smith adamantine must have been euphoric. So I created the most broken fighter character of all time. Bit of backstory. In the future, we will be running a campaign known as the Fever Dream, which is a campaign that spawned from my DM's Fever Dream. Originally, it was a combined version of the TV shows Star vs. the Forces and Adventure Time. However, our DM wanted our input into this campaign, so now it features Pokemon, The Legend of Zelda, Dark Souls, so on and so forth. When we begin this campaign, we will be doing what our DM calls a precursor, which is a one-shot before the main campaign begins. We are allowed to bring any level 20 character we want, any items, including homebrew, as long as our character's backstory can explain how we received said item and if the DM approves it. As a side note, my DM allows us to dual wield heavy weapons if our strength score is 30. This will be explained later. In most of the campaigns I have played in, I'm usually the heavy hitter of the group, so I wanted to bring the most broken fighter to this one shot. The magical items I'm bringing are 2 potions of speed, which is just a liquid haste spell, adamantine plate, making sure nothing can crit me, belt of storm giant strength, brings strength up to 29, hammer of thunderbolts, brings strength up to a 30, the blackfire great axe. This weapon is the most downright broken thing I have ever made. Since I have a strength of 30, it gets a plus 13 to slashing damage. Every time I attack with this axe, it deals 4d6 fire and 4d6 necrotic damage. If I land a crit, it activates a magical effect, that effect being a spell known as Vampiric Touch, which does 5d6 damage. For my feats, I took Dual Wielder, Heavy Armor Master, Lucky, Mage Slayer, Tough, Sentinel, Great Weapon Master, -5 for attack swing, plus 10 damage. My race is a half-orc, so I also get an extra d12 hit die on a crit. I chose Champion Fighter as my class, so I'll get 8 attacks, plus my bonus action allows me to attack 1 more time due to my feats combined with my Potion of Speed. I can attack 10 times in 1 turn. So, in theory, if I roll all crits and max out all my damage, I can do 1,850 slashing, vampiric, fire, and necrotic damage in 1 turn. Not exactly broken, but very hard to counter. A Soul Knife Rogue Champion Fighter. As you can see, my DPS is not exactly high, but not many monsters can actually reliably defend against me since the PC can deal psychic damage with the blades. And this, combined with the fact that I can dual wield a short sword with the Psionic Dagger, means that as long as I attack first with the Psionic Dagger, I can reliably deal 1d6 psychic damage and 1d6 slashing damage every turn. 3.5 era here, I was allowed to play a natural-born Lycanthrope. Though we were level 7, I was playing a level 1 fighter. With the 3 HD for my animal side, the +3 level adjustment for Lycanthrope, and only 1 level in fighter, it doesn't look that bad on paper. However, being able to use the pounce ability to get off 5 attacks, 1 bite, 2 claws, and 2 rakes in animal or hybrid form was not something my DM actually expected. To be honest, I didn't even know how broken that was. I was using an Amulet of Mighty Fists, turning my natural attacks into +1 axiomatic, basically Bane against chaotic creatures weapons, coupled with some AC item bracers and a Torque of Resistance. My magic items were on par with everyone else, but the ability to make a full attack at the end of a charge is amazing. An extra 10d6 damage to chaotic creatures was insane. So much so that I had to talk with my DM after a particularly big fight to see if he was still good with me playing this character. He was fine, but he shot down the rest of the party wanting to become were-panthers alongside me. Not really the most OP thing on its own, but thanks to some homebrew items GM gave us, I was pretty much party's nuker and frontline. All I played was Battlemaster with unarmed fighting and Crusher feat, plus getting some monk levels later on. GM decided it was smart to give me brass knuckles that added flat damage to attacks. So with unarmed fighting style, I dealt d6/d8 plus 13 per swing, and I could swing about 5 to 6 times after level 5 with action surge, so most of the things we faced would either get pummeled to death or be very close to it when I land the hits. Honestly, I think Champ would have worked better for crit fishing and synergy with Crusher. I just started DMing 3 days ago. I've had experience in 3 other campaigns, and I decided to get advice from my friend's dad, who had DM'd all my other campaigns and did hella research on YouTube. Turns out that you can study and plan as much as you want, but if you don't have experience, your players are going to be OP. Not knowing too much about the game, my friend asked me to make his character because he'd be coming later in the night. I thought it would be funny to make him a holy half-angel Aasimar bard who can't cast spells and is insanely weak, only relying on the power of his god. Me, and it's the most fun character ever. Instead of hit dice, I have him make constant religion and charisma checks to call upon his god, which we have fun conversations with. He does have weapons and spells if he wants, but I've made the system where if he gets less than a 13 on a roll, his god makes up an excuse and doesn't listen. If he gets a 14 to 15, I roll 2d6 damage. If he gets 16 to 17, I roll 2d8 damage. If he rolls an 18 to 19, I roll 3d10, and for a 20, I roll 3d12, or adjust the damage to fit the enemies in a way I think is fair or not too broken. Definitely fucking up the rules, but we all find it fun and hilarious, and I make it not insanely broken. I thought this was about most broken, so maybe you need to be more broken. Sounds like it. Not me, but I have a friend who has a Goliath barbarian that earned a tattoo that allows him to roll 4d6 necrotic lifesteal additional damage on any melee attack up to 10 times a day. He has Sentinel feats that allow him to abuse reactions with full power attacks, great weapon mastery, expertise in just about every strength check, and gauntlets that don't count as armor, so his unarmored defense AC is like 27. I have never seen him be hit by anything when not being in the center of an AoE or unconscious/restrained, and he always heals almost to full the very next turn. I've only seen him go below half health once, and it was during the big bad evil guy fight. He basically took him down by himself with only some minor guiding bolts to help. My first Pathfinder game ever, the DM wanted to do an OP campaign, so right off the bat, that's fun. :D. I forget how we did stats. I think we rolled for them, but I don't know for sure. And we were allowed to stack the tomes that increased your stats, and because my PC was romancing the big bad, she had endless pockets, so she could get as many of these as she wanted, so I abused it gleefully. Her charisma was like 140 by the end of the campaign. We were to max level 2 classes, not combine them, just have 2 whole classes for one character at max level. It was stupid and great. My character was a level 20 rogue, level 20 dread necromancer. I used a Pathfinder import from 3.5 that the DM okayed without much reading. Being a max level DN meant that I was a lich, so I found a lich template and applied it accordingly, again with the DM's okay. The template, I would later find out, was meant for NPCs. Oops. So this level 40 character, whose effective caster level was dumb, like 40 to 80 or something because her charisma was like 90 because of the template application, who did have an epic backstory to accompany this much shenanigans, ended up with an effective character level of 180 by the end of the campaign. This had little to no effect on her stats, but it affected her saving throw DCs and spell attacks. No one could save against her spells, and I loved the feeling of playing her. She has since been revived as a goddess of magic whose love for a good god of the sun has changed her into a more chaotic, neutral version of her previous self that is more gentle, but is protective of those who are abused by the ones that are supposed to take care of them, due to elements from her original backstory. Sorry, she just has a special place in my heart. I poured a lot of my own pain into her, and she was very therapeutic to play. My other character for the same campaign, we each had 2 PCs, one good and one evil. An Inquisitor of the Goddess of Loyalty was very normal stats, basically underpowered compared to everyone else, but still so much fun to play. And her OP moment was when she entered a dungeon in search of the fate of the founder of the Paladins Guild. We found him. He turned out to be evil, and my Inquisitor immediately threw hands, pulling out the elven curved blade she had and fighting him. He tried to run away from her, but she dimension doored right to him and succeeded on an intimidation check to freak him out. :3. It was great. The party paladin made sure that she had his aura buffs and everything, so she could hit the motherfucker in the face. She later got an item from an evil god for winning his tournament that gave her a plus 80 to every stat, but also made her give off a faint evil aura. She wore it anyway, because she didn't care about being good. She cared about being loyal. Same Inquisitor also ended the campaign in a relationship with her goddess. This campaign was horribly broken, and we had a DMPC that was also the big bad evil guy and was awful and broken, and I kind of want to tell people about it sometimes. XD. Sorry it's so long. Greater than W less than. I hope you found some inspiring ways to rules lawyer yourself into some unsuspecting dungeon master's burn book today. Thank you again for specking into Constitution and sitting this one through to the very end. If you've got a knack for the numbers and would like to share your most OP character you've ever been allowed to play, feel free to share them in the comments section below. If you've got another story that you'd like to share with the MrRipper community, we have a subreddit for that. r/MrRipper, where we gather stories just like these for videos on this channel all the time. If you're a DM or a player looking for a group, you may do well to check out MrRipper's Group Finder Discord server, where 4,000 plus nerdos are looking to find a group and roll up some weapons-grade memories together. I hope that this week you spend some time tinkering with something you've been hoping to explore. If you love me and you want to manifest joy into my heart, please check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/DaveMakesNoises, where I jam out on the reg, or you can find me elsewhere on the internet at Dave Makes Noises as well. Thank you so much again for watching until the end. Please sub for Nat 20s, ring the bell, join the early squad, leave a comment or a how do you do. We love you here at Rip Daddy's house, and we'll see you next time.